Greetings and welcome to Education in Focus, powered by Chalkboard News. I'm Dan McCaleb, Vice President of News and Content at the Franklin News Foundation, which publishes chalkboardnews.com. Chalkboard is a news website dedicated to issues related to kindergarten through 12th grade education. Joining me as he does each and every week is Chalkboard's K through 12 editor, Brendan Clary. How are you, Brendan?
I'm doing well, fully recovered from a cold, so I'm doing well. How about you?
I am doing well, thank you. 'Tis the season, cold and flu season. Brendan, class sizes are an important topic for teachers, parents, students, and taxpayers. It's often a negotiating tactic when teachers' unions negotiate new contracts with school districts. In New York, the state legislature recently passed a new law dictating what the maximum class size can be, with different ceilings for like kindergarten through third grade classes, 4th through 8th grade, and high school. But there's a dispute in New York City schools between the teachers' union and the district over whether state law is being followed. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so this was a great look at this from Chalkboard's writer, Julian Roberts Gramella. He basically saw what the union was going to say, and we heard from them. They basically say that in 665 Title I schools, at least half of the classes have more students than are allowed, according to the teachers union for New York City. And they found that in 40 of those Title I schools, every class was over the size limit. And of the 1,267 Title I schools in the district, 97% have at least one class that exceeds the state's size limit, right? But the New York City's public schools, they contradicted those claims, and they said that we are fully in compliance with the class size mandates. They basically said there's a phase-in process, so that only 20% of classrooms across the city have to be at or under those class size limits this school year, and that 40% of classes are at or below the cap. So they said, there is this new law. It does mandate class size, but there is, some lead-in time to get to where we need to be, and we're well under where we need to be. Now, then there's been some pushback, about what that would mean too. I think so that you have the class sizes, as you mentioned, as a negotiating tactic. Portland Public Schools, for example, they recently ended a strike in that side of the nation on the West Coast. One of the things that they were striking over was class sizes. And so that recently wrapped up here, and students went back after that Thanksgiving holiday. But that's been something, that people are talking a lot about in terms of, the funding and how that goes to teachers, right? That was a big concern in Portland Public Schools is, if the classes sizes are bigger and teachers are working more to try to get, all the students work done in their classes, they were arguing, you need to be able to up the pay. And so there's like specific stipends in that contract. And I wrote about that at Chalkboard. So that is something to be aware of. Like that's in the background with these kinds of talks about that. But essentially with that funding model, there is some concern with the state funding model, how that will affect the school district's funds for it's kind of against its own goals, right? So basically it is trying to, there's an equity funding model in the New York City school systems where they're trying to, direct money towards schools that maybe need it more than other schools. So they have essentially a report came out, I believe from the Urban Institute, that analyzed how this state law will affect New York City's funding, and that it would direct more of the money, because of the class size caps, it would direct more money to more affluent schools that are in not so much need as some of these other schools in maybe poor areas where, there are lower income families who are there. So that's some of the concern there, that from the public school system there, saying, this kind of effect here might be not exactly what the law intended, which is a really interesting effect. I think if, you're thinking about class sizes, you're thinking, how do we fix that problem? But then is there sort of like this, kind of unintended consequence there from that funding?
So I guess to clarify, Brendan, in some instances, at least, there are lower income neighborhoods and lower income schools where they meet the new state law requirement, where you can only have so many number of students per classroom. And in some of the more affluent communities, they're not meeting that. So in order to get that class size equity, the lower income community school districts or schools would have to give up some of the funding to the higher income neighborhood schools so they can meet that state law. And that's a big conflict because one of the intentions of this was to help students in lower income areas.
Right. Well, yeah. So that's exactly it. So yeah, essentially you have larger class sizes in more affluent schools, where it would be outside of the limit. So in order to get those class sizes down, you would have to pay those schools more to get more teachers in to direct that. And so that's going to raise the cost per pupil based on this funding model. It's going to raise the price per pupil, and for the schools that need it less than some of these more needier schools. In terms of, so basically this is sort of a conflict, in the funding model of the school versus what the union or different class size proponents might say. So it's just sort of an interesting policy thing that is going to have to be worked out. And there's not from what I can understand too, there's not more money associated with the class size bill. So there's not an extra appropriation. So
the state's not sending them more money. New York is already a high tax state. Are there people concerned that local property taxes are going to have to be raised to make this new state law? I mean, that seems like that could be a reality if they don't get this figured out.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would raise property taxes or if it would just, affect the amount of money that, some students receive versus the students that they want to receive. So would it direct money from lower income students to more affluent students so that those students who do not need it as much are getting more money than the public school would want, right? The system would want, because, or even with the, it kind of gets all complicated. They're trying to, basically they have a policy that's trying to be equitable and allocate funds where it's most needed. And so that kind of runs against this, because if you have that class size, it's sort of an equalizer, right? And so it's working against, that sort of equity principle that is kind of baked into the funding formula, right? So and you put it very clearly that this would direct more money toward more affluent schools, and it would sort of leave these schools that they're trying to target with more funds than their more affluent counterparts out to dry. So you're right there.
Well, fascinating topic, Brennan. We'll continue to follow your reporting on it at Chalkboard News, or the team's reporting on it at chalkboardnews.com. But we are out of time. For Brendan Clary, I'm Dan McCaleb. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe.
Are you tired of news that puts politics over people? At the nonprofit Franklin News Foundation, we believe in putting people over politics by delivering nonpartisan news and audio content that serves you, the American taxpayer. With Franklin News Foundation, you can read fact-based, state-focused news for free at thecentersquare.com. You can listen to civil, balanced conversations between policy experts through our podcast network at americastalking.com. Or you can get in-depth news on K-12 education spending, curriculum, and school safety at chalkboardnews.com. It's all free through Franklin, where we put you, the American taxpayer, first in every story, episode, and conversation. And it's only possible through our supporters. Together, we can produce content that puts people over politics and brings Americans the news they deserve. Become a supporter today at franklinnews.org/donate. Once again, that's franklinnews.org/donate.